There is no better time to go back to the basics than right now with Greg Salo, going to show you a little bit of acrylic consistency right now.
When it comes to the basic fundamentals of acrylic application, every beginner has to understand consistency well. I'm going to take you through the steps so that you understand how to pick it up, set it down, and how to control acrylic well so that it could start your acrylic career off well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with cover pink, some nail liquid, and a towel that I could pick it up and wipe it down on. Okay, so the first thing you want to understand as a beginner is when you are working with your brush, you have to make sure that you load it up with the proper amount of nail liquid. And then you're going to notice that once I pick it up, I need to press it on one side. Now here's the thing. If I submerge my brush and I load it up with liquid, I want to tap it on the opposite side of the brush so that when I lift up, I'm going to be picking it up with the side that has the most nail liquid. You do not want to do this. You do not want to pull liquid off of both sides of the brush. That is a no-no. You want to submerge your brush, you want to tap it on one side, and then this is going to load the bristles with enough monomer so that you could pick up a nice even pearl. A lot of beginners make the mistake of pulling too much liquid off multiple sides, and what they end up doing is they end up dragging their brush through, and as you can see, you have a really dry acrylic pearl. See how the edges are not even? It's really dry right here. That's a bad looking pearl. So notice, if I take my brush again and at the right angle, I'm going to press into the surface and I'm going to bounce. And what this is going to do is, you can see, it's going to allow me to pick up a nice pearl that's moist. Once you have that consistency, I want you to practice a tempo count, okay? So notice, if I submerge my brush, tap it a couple of times, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bounce a few times. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to get a nice even pearl. I'm going to set it right here. I'm going to get my brush, tap it a couple times. 1, 2, 3. And you can see that I have the same size pearl every single time. Again, I need to flatten out my powder, take my brush, tap it a couple of times. 1, 2, 3. And then again, the whole purpose of this drill is so that you can pick up a pearl with ease. Once you could pick up multiple pearls with ease, then what I want you to do is practice loading up your brush with more liquid. And then what I want you to do is bounce more than 3 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Notice how much bigger the pearl is on my brush. And then again, once I set it down, you can see how, again, the size difference between these two pearls, right? It's almost double. Some of you are probably wondering right now, well, Greg, what if I want to pick up a smaller pearl, right? Again, what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to remove a little bit more liquid from your brush. So what I'm going to do is, if I take my brush and I tap it 1, 2, 3 times, and then I go 1, 2, notice how I'm going to pick up something about half the size of this. So let's go through that one more time. I'm going to take my brush, I'm going to tap it a few times, 1, 2, 3, and then again 1, 2, and then what I have is a much smaller pearl. The whole purpose of this drill is so that you can get used to the right consistency, so that when you set it down onto the surface of the nail, the product is going to be able to flow and you're going to be able to guide it with your brush. All right, so all my beginner students, when we're starting, the main objective is to try to get the product to flow from here to here. I want you to try to do an overlay without having to brush or stroke it too much. I want you to guide it with the tip of the brush. So the length of this nail, what I'm gonna have to do is I'm gonna have to take my brush, I'm gonna tap it once, and I'm gonna bounce a few times. 1, 2, 3. This is going to give me a nice even pearl. I'm immediately going to set it down to the back end and then use the tip of my brush to lightly poke at the cuticle area. Now notice, once I'm done with this, all I want you to practice is taking the tip of the brush and just lightly touching the surface to guide the acrylic all the way down to the very bottom of the nail. Okay? Now you'll notice that, again, I'm not trying to brush it or stroke it. All I am trying to do is get the product from this point to this point in the least amount of effort. I'm gonna wipe my brush. Now, again, as you can see, if the acrylic doesn't run all the way down the sides, that's not a problem. What I'm going to be able to do is take the body of the brush, and again, look at how I'm actually taking the body of the brush and moving it down to the sides. And as it starts to set, if I decide that I want to be able to brush it, you see how tight it gets? I'm going to be able to do the same thing on the opposite side. It's really important for most beginners to practice consistency and, again, trust the run. You want to be able to get the product to flow from this point to this point in the least amount of effort. Let me do this again. I'm going to take my brush. Okay, I'm going to tap it once. I'm not breaking the bristles back. What I'm doing is I'm just lightly touching it, right? So just like a light touch, what takes off a lot of the monomer. And then what I want to be able to do is I want to bounce a few times. Bounce, bounce, bounce to a 3 count. Give it a couple seconds. I hold my brush like this so the pearl doesn't fall off. Then I turn it around. I set it down with a little bit of space. You can see the space that I have around the edge. And then what I'm gonna do with the finger pointed down is I'm quickly going to use the tip of my brush to contour around the cuticle area. Now you'll notice as the product starts to flow, all I have to do is use the body of my brush to bring it down and all the way through. Right? Once it gets down to this point, you can see there's a little bit of space. Okay, I'm going to use the base of my brush just to kind of bring it down and all the way through. Right? Once I've overlaid the whole entire nail, this is where I'm going to be able to use my brush to keep it in form. So a combination between working back over the top, lightly brushing it to making it even. If I have to use the base of my brush so that it doesn't basically come over the edge, you're going to be able to do that. All right. The overlay is really, really important because what it's going to do, it's going to allow you to practice getting the cuticles tight, getting your sidewalls tight, and being able to control the run of the acrylic so that you can get it from this point to this point in the least amount of effort. Once you get skilled enough, what you're going to be able to do is you're going to be able to take your brush, right? You're going to be able to bounce a few times. I'm going to set it right here to the back end. And then notice, as soon as I press the cuticle, all I really have to do, as you can see, is all I have to do is trust the run. If I hold the finger down, the product is going to flow from this point to this point in the least amount of effort. And then once it gets close, I lift the finger up, and then I could use the body of my brush to work it from side to side. I never worry about it coming off the edge because I could just use the base of my brush just to hold it in place, right? I trust the run. I'm going to get it all the way down to this point. I'm going to use the body of my brush to work it from side to side. I'm going to make sure that we hold it in place so that it doesn't run off the side of the nail. Right? But as you can see, I have a really, really nice application all the way around the edge. Then as it starts to dry, this is where I'm going to be able to use, again, the tip of my brush as it starts to set to smooth out the surface and give it the texture you want. So it's going to make it really easy for me to file this into shape. It doesn't matter what powder you're working with in the Young Nails line, whether you're working with Core, Speed, the cover powders, they're all going to have a workability where they're going to self-level depending on how much liquid you use. You have to experiment. The key when you are starting is knowing how much liquid to remove from your brush, knowing how to pick up the right consistency of pearl so that it's not too dry. You want to be able to set that pearl down so that it flows, and all you have to do is guide it into place. Once it gets into place and it starts to set, then you can start to brush it through to make it nice and even. And this is going to set you up so that you have great acrylic skills.